And this is the Animated Educated YouTube channel. And today we're talking to David Regal, who is, or how do you describe yourself?
I'm a TV writer.
Okay.
Magic has generally been my secret passion. Mm-hmm. Some would call it my secret shame, but it really isn't. It's always been my obsession and my love. And when you're a writer, sometimes you have an agent that says, don't let anyone know you do magic.
Right.
But I've always loved it, and lately the job I have in TV coincidentally combines comedy writing and magic, the two things I love, called the Carbonaro effect. And so I'm a TV writer, but yes, I love magic, and because I started doing all this work in TV, in magic, it's now a little more pronounced.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you started off on Rugrats or something like that?
I was with a comedy group for many years in New York. Even though it was in New York, it was called Chicago City Limits. And we did a lot of shows. I probably did about 2,000 shows with them. We had our own theater on the Upper East Side of New York. When I say our own theater, we rented it in the basement of a church, but it's a historic theater across from Light Opera of Manhattan. And we'd do 6 shows a week, every week, forever. And I did that for about 6 years. And I started doing TV production in New York through that group. And eventually, when the group sort of, there's some disharmony amongst some of the members, as often happens, I worked TV production full-time in New York, and then snuck out to L.A. because a lot of my friends who were stand-ups went to L.A. and became TV writers, often because they didn't like the lifestyle of being a stand-up. Travel. If they were married, if they had young kids, they're looking for a different lifestyle. And generally, the thought was go to L.A., because we were all in New York, go to L.A., become a TV writer. Well, all my friends did it before I did, but eventually I'd make up lies, and I'd leave work for this TV company, and just terrible, terrible lies. My mom's sick, and just really things that you hope there's no karma in the world, because these were just big, fat lies. And I'd sneak out to L.A., and I would pitch. Now, I'm really reticent when it comes to cold calls and this and that, but at that time there was no other way. So I was writing all these cold letters to people and cold calls to companies, just from looking at the trades. And eventually I got, meetings. And out of those meetings, I got, one of those awful option deals where basically you make no money and you tie up the property for 6 months or whatever the agreement happens to be. But then at least you have something in process. So I eventually left New York, moved to L.A., and the thing that I sold, a kind of a comedy reality show, it was in development for about a year as I went through my savings with my young kids and my family. It was in development for about a year before everyone I knew at this company, everyone I knew was fired. It was a bloodletting. And it wasn't like I was the reason, but it just happened to be like half the company was fired, and everyone I knew was in the fired half. And so I was left going, oh, shit, what am I going to do? When I bemoaned my fate with some people back in New York on the phone, they suggested, hey, do you know this person or that person? And I started, putting out feelers for writing gigs. And eventually, I'd get that first spec script and whatnot. And that's how I got into the business, just by reaching out, finally getting one interview here or there, and then these very low-paying, entry-level, freelance gigs. And in animation, the money can be very bad with these freelance script gigs. But it was a way in, and I got traction at Classic Chupo, which at that point was riding very high, and I, sort of went up the ranks at Classic Chupo over a period of years. And that's sort of my entry into being a TV writer, because I sold this one thing into development that went to hell, and I called everyone I knew, and eventually someone said, well, I think this person's doing something, that person's doing something, and swallowing the fact that I feel maladjusted making cold calls and stuff like that, I did it, and eventually they liked the first script, then they liked the second script, then I'd get a staff job, then I'd get a better staff job. And over a period of years, I learned what it was like to be a writer in animation. Till eventually I was running Rugrats and Wild Thornberrys and those Class Chupo shows.
Class Chupo is the first. They're the ones that kind of did the animation for the first Simpsons.
Yeah. They had it for whatever that period of time was before there was, I guess, a difference of opinion, and they no longer. I don't know if they ended up with a piece of The Simpsons or no piece of The Simpsons, but yes, they started out as the animation company that conceived a lot of the look. Of course, Matt Groening really drew it, but I think Klasky Chupo had some input, maybe about the skin color and stuff like that now we take for granted. They were very hot for a while. Yeah. And they had a lot of successes one after another, and I wrote a lot of those successes with them, and they kept buying, better real estate. And it's interesting because my first job, they had me in a little, they called it a cottage, but it was on McCadden. If you know Hollywood, McCadden's this little street near Highland, which is a big street, because now when I worked there, it was before Hollywood and Highland, the big development. Right. So now everyone knows, Highland's the big thoroughfare. But McCann's a little side street, and they'd have these little cottages that you could do whatever you wanted with, and they made these cottages into production houses. Because people think Klasky Chupo, they think of those buildings that were near Fountain with all the cartoons on the side of the buildings. And everyone goes, oh, that's where you worked. Well, nope. I was over on these little cottages in McCadden. And it was before they had hit pretty big, but they were going to hit much bigger. And it was funny, now it's funny in retrospect. The guy that was going to be my boss on this first job was giving me the grand tour of this little cottage. And so he's walking me around. Of course, I'm just delighted to have any employment, really, But he's walking me around, and I was, trying to be my best behavior, because it's a job I really am happy. Either I had it and I was getting the tour, or I didn't have it and I was getting the tour. Anyhow, we walk by this table in a common area, and on the table is a plate with some bagels. And he goes, and I go, well, and he goes, yeah, those are for everyone, we get them on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I laughed because I thought he was making a joke. Because who has bagels on Tuesdays and Thursdays? Bagels in quantity back then, what were they, 35 cents each? I don't know. We had them on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I thought for some reason it was a joke, and I laughed, and I shut up because I realized it wasn't. But at that moment in my mind, I'm thinking, somewhere there was a meeting where someone said, maybe we should give them bagels on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. No, Tuesdays, Thursdays. And so I realized, wow, it's a nickel and dime business. But I've since learned, having had a career of sorts, going through animation, reality, sitcoms, just about the whole business is a nickel and dime business. Even on shows with big budgets, people care a lot about saving money. Maybe that's not true with every show. I guess if you have that 800-pound gorilla show, they're throwing money around. I don't know if that's still true, but there certainly were shows like that. But generally, people were very concerned with not overspending, even on shows that, to my mind, seemed, a little beyond that. But yeah, people were very concerned. And I had a very good time at Klasky Chupo. I really liked it there. The guy who brought me in and all that, but yes, I did think it was a joke.
So that's how you got in. And then when I first heard about you, you were working on the Jim Belushi sitcom.
That was one of the first sitcoms I worked on.
Oh, okay.
According to Jim.
Mm-hmm.
And that was interesting. And, I got on that show, and I don't remember, somewhere in there, I sold an Everybody Loves Raymond spec. And that's an unusual thing to do in sitcoms, because the way it works is, well, first of all, I loved animation, but when I did it, there was no union at all associated with it. I think that's changed now to some degree.
It has.
And, of course, we all remember when the Simpsons writers and the King of the Hill writers made a stand, and the WGA said, okay, we'll represent these shows. But it was a huge move for the writing staff to be repped by the WGA, and now there's, again, different unions. But When I did it, it was still the Wild West. It's kind of what reality is now. Reality now is the Wild West. And I don't mean that in a good way. When you do union work and switch to non-union work, you realize, oh, here's why you want to be doing union work. And as I say, I don't know what the state of where things are with animation, but when I did Rugrats, I remember there was an ad in the trades, a full-page ad. The year I was running Rugrats, it said, "Thank you, Rugrats, for the $1 billion with a B dollars worth of ancillary merchandising we did this year." I'm thinking, $1 billion. And the writing staff didn't get $1.50. I mean, no residuals. So that's my segue to why did I want to get into sitcoms. It's not like I had any preference, though, I want to experience doing a live audience show and see what that was like and all that. Just because I came out of improv and you start to be a laugh whore in the best possible way. You love hearing a laugh. You just love hearing a laugh. Oh, look at me, I wrote a line that got a laugh. But it's a good feeling. It's like the payback, like you're a dog and that's your treat. So yeah, I did want it in that respect. But I loved animation too, but there were no residuals, no union, nothing. And with a family, you go, oh my God, my friends on sitcoms, they're getting residuals and pension and all this stuff. Right. So I'm writing these spec scripts, and the Everybody Loves Raymond story is an interesting one because the way it worked with spec scripts, if you're going to be a writer, you have to submit scripts. And generally, especially back then, you're supposed to have spec scripts for a popular show. There were more popular sitcoms back then than there are now. I mean, big, fat sitcoms that everyone watched. And the reason you submit a script for a show like that is the people evaluating you as a writer wanted to know, could you write to an established character's voice? Because that was the job description. You were going up either for a new show that already had, a pilot with characters in it, or an established show that already had characters, even better established, ingrained in the minds of the viewer. Can you nail that voice? And that's what they're looking for. Also, story construction, and is it funny, and all that stuff. But when you do a spec script, the kind of unwritten law was you can submit that to any show except the show that it's a spec of. In other words, if you wrote a Friends spec, and trust me, when Friends was on the air, most everyone wrote a Friends spec because it was the big show. Well, you could submit it to every show in the world, but not Friends, for a couple of reasons. One, legally, you can imagine, a lot of ideas are tossed around in the writer's room. Can you imagine if the spec script was the same plot as something that had already been tossed around, and now you produce your show and someone says, oh no, I gave you my script and you stole it? What a nightmare. Also, it's a little presumptuous to go to Friends with a Friends script and say, I know you guys write Friends, but take a look at my Friends. So normally, for those two reasons, it's just not done. But I wrote this Everybody Loves Raymond spec. And at the time, I knew someone that was like mid-level on their staff. So he wasn't a baby writer, but he wasn't a senior writer. And I said to him, hey, can you read this? Tell me, is it in the right ballpark? Because it's going to be my spec. So he read it, and he called me up, and I was sitting at my desk at Rugrats, and he said, yeah, I read it, and it was pretty interesting. I mentioned it to Phil. Now, Phil is Phil Rosenthal, showrunner of Everybody Loves Raymond. And I was like, he showed it to Phil? Or he talked about it to Phil? And we were wondering, could you come in and talk about it more on Wednesday? And I didn't even look at my schedule. If there was a record, I'd call in sick. I mean, this was, for me, I couldn't believe it. Can you come in and talk more about it on Wednesday? And so I just said, of course. And then my friend said, it was near the end of the season, said, we're in pretty good shape. We don't know really the state of everything, for the rest of the season or what our needs are going to be. And so I said, are you telling me the meeting's going to be Wednesday or a year from Wednesday? And it was a year from Wednesday. Oh. They called me on Monday. They said, no, we really are full for this whole season. And they kept my idea on a whiteboard for a year. It just stayed there. And midway through the season, another writer did a very good script that I felt, even though it wasn't the same as mine, it was close enough they didn't have to do mine. I don't mean, it was the same thing or anything like that, but I felt, what? It's in the same sort of pond. But they did mine anyway. And they brought me in, for that production, for that whole production week and all that. And it turned out to be a very big episode for them. It was just, everything fell into place. And that was a real anomaly. a spec script ending up being produced by the show, everyone liking it, and it was great. I mean, that was really how I got into sitcoms.
Wow. Okay, so wow. So I guess Raymond liked it then.
Yeah, and then they hired me to do another script after that.
So did you do, how many years were you there?
I was never on staff. I was an outside writer.
Oh, okay.
But they produced 2 of my episodes. Or I like to say 1% of the series.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, for me, I was in awe of them all because I felt at the time was the best cast on television, the best writing staff on television, best showrunner I'd ever. Maybe I don't think I've ever met a better showrunner than Phil Rosenthal. I've only spent a few weeks with him, working on the episodes that I wrote. But it was a thrill in every respect. And I was just, excited and kind of in awe of the whole situation.
So that kind of led you up to the Jim Belushi?
Somewhere in there, yeah. It was all around the same time.
Okay.
And then because the script I wrote for Raymond was a female script, it was a big story about Deborah and Marie. And because that episode got a lot of traction, everyone just liked that episode. I was then hired by every female-driven sitcom year after year after year. I mean, everybody. From Fran Drescher to Bonnie Hunt to Hope and Faith, Whoopi Goldberg, all these female-driven shows. And for some reason, I was in this bag. Oh, he must write for females. Look at this Raymond script. I was like, oh, whatever. Okay, just keep it coming.
Yeah. Did you ever direct anything or?
No, I wrote a couple of features. I've done really a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And I have no interest in directing, absolutely zero. I've learned that my temperament is perfect for things like improv comedy and sitcoms. What do they have in common? You move on. And that appeals to my lack of patience. Unless you're the boss of the sitcom, you're really working on that episode for about a week. I mean, there's a period of time where the room is breaking stories, but then when it comes down to that script, one of the writers turns in the script, and that production week is it. If it starts on a Monday, if you're doing a live audience show, a multicam, you're going to have a table read on Monday. Everyone's marking up their script, what seems to work, what doesn't work. And then you're writing, and it's shot Thursday and Friday or just Friday, and it's over. It's over. And then on Monday, it's a whole nother set of problems to solve. And that appeals to me. Okay, I'm done with this. Let's see another Reign of Hell. Another, story that isn't working, jokes that aren't landing, and let's play with that for a week. I love the process. Some people hate that, and some people complain about writing. I like the process, and I like writing. I like the process more than anything else. That goes true with magic, too. I like the process of problem solving and, failing or succeeding. I just like the process. Of course, you want to succeed.
Right.
But a lot of failure is part of that. You can't just succeed. You hit your head against the wall. And you have to. Some people hate that. I find, that whole gauntlet that you go through in that week just fun. I've always enjoyed it.